Hey, welcome to our live stream. Today is the 16th of January, I think. Yeah, 16th of January, 2020. And today we have just a very quick thing here. This is not taking the place of our weekly episode, but we did need to show you something pretty exciting that just arrived today, and that is the Deity Interview Kit, the Deity Connect Interview Kit. So here, for example, we have the plug-on transmitter. Currently, I'm using this with the Sennheiser MKH416 shotgun microphone. That's what you're hearing right now. And that is transmitting over here to the receiver. And we're running this through the MixPre and then into my Panasonic GH5S. That's what you're hearing right now. So wanted to take a quick look at this with you guys. Obviously, I'll be doing a full review here in the next few weeks. But I'm pretty excited about where the Deity Connect system has come. It was launched early, was it second quarter 2019? And I was pretty impressed then from the standpoint that Deity had come from having no wireless systems to having 2.4 gigahertz, dual channel receiver, 2 body pack transmitter system. It wasn't perfect. There was some self noise in the system that I thought that they could do a little work on. But it looks like they've done some pretty nice work on this. And so now, evidently, one of the biggest requests they had was for something like this, which is called a plug-on transmitter. So it has an XLR connector right here, and you plug it directly onto an XLR mic. As a bonus, you can just barely see right here, there's also a 3.5 millimeter microphone input. So that's what we're going to talk about just a little bit here today and give you a chance to hear it. Let me actually go back to the receiver here, and you can see, just so we're driving the levels here, we are going to take you into the menu here, and we'll go into transmitter A. So this is transmitter A in this case. We have the mic level set to plus 21 dB. And then if we go back on the receiver, we have the output level set to minus 9 dB. A lot of people ask questions, oh, hey, what should I set this to? Well, I think plus 24 dB, depending on your microphone. Usually you're not going to be quite this close to microphones if you're booming a wireless mic, for example, or if you're running a handheld interview mic. Plus 24 is probably a good place to start on the transmitter. And then let's go back and get another receiver out level at minus 9 dB. Just a good starting point. Obviously, you're going to have to adjust it for your situation. But when we do that, we're getting some pretty healthy levels here, as you can see on the receiver here. So as I talk, you can see the meter there on the left-hand side. Ooh, we just tickled the limiter there. I do have the limiter on as well. This has an inbuilt analog limiter. So this is a system that's come, it came out of the gate with some really good features. I felt like there was still some room for improvement, again, in terms of self-noise and things of that nature. But from what I'm hearing right now, it's pretty good. This is a live situation, so we're not doing, obviously, any processing whatsoever. And this is exactly what it sounds like. So pretty excited to see that Deity is moving this system forward. Now, it's a 2.4 gigahertz system. What does that mean? It's sharing the same frequency bandwidth as Wi-Fi. That's good and bad. It's good from the standpoint that frequency range is unlicensed in pretty much every part of the world. You don't have to have a special license to do this or to use that frequency. So you're not going to have to worry about buying a different system if you're going to be shooting in other parts of the world as well. That's a really nice thing. The not so nice thing, it's 2.4 gigahertz. It's not quite as good at piercing through barriers as the typical professional level or UHF wireless systems that most professionals are using. So they're transmitting at much lower frequencies, and those lower frequencies have the ability to pierce through barriers a lot better. So, but if you're, but depending on your use case, this can be completely fine. And I think usually if you're basically line of sight, or if you have the body pack transmitter on the back of your talent, we found that you could easily be, 10, 15 meters away and still be okay. It's when you start getting beyond that you started running into potential issues. If you were outdoors, indoors, it fared a little better. So in any case, it's been a good system so far. Let's go take a look at some of the features here, because there are some kind of exciting features. And I want to just show you here on the screen here. We'll take a look here. So Deity website here. A couple things. If you are, this is pretty exciting if you're not in the United States. You can transmit, and it's also a recorder at the same time if you're not in the United States. Unfortunately, because of patent issues in the United States, once you start recording, the transmission turns off. And again, that's largely because I believe Zaxcom has a patent on that. So I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but I understand that's the main idea. But nevertheless, what that means to me in practical terms is if I'm in a situation where I'm having trouble keeping connectivity, I now have an option. I can now say, okay, forget it. I'm not going to fight with the wireless anymore. I'm going to go ahead and start recording, and we're going to use it as a remote recorder. And just use a clapperboard or a slate, and we can sync it up in post. So you have some options there. And if you're outside of the United States, well, big bonus for you guys. You can record at the same time that you are transmitting wirelessly. So you don't even have to stop the take. If wireless drops out, you've got a backup recording on a micro SD card right here on the transmitter. Super, super nice feature. So it's really cool to start to see that in other systems as well. Just like the original system, you have different output levels. 100 milliwatts is actually a lot more powerful than most of the other systems. Even a lot of the professional systems go up to 50 milliwatts. So this is really providing you a lot of options here. And usually I just leave this on auto, and I've had pretty good results there. In a wireless system that is sub $1,000, this one has, when we first got it, when it came out last year, the analog limiter wasn't amazing, but it seems to be doing pretty well right now. I was tickling even now we're tickling the limiter from time to time, and it's sounding pretty good in my headphones here. I'll have to go back and listen to the whole thing, but that's nice as well. Of course, low-cut filters, which is nice. You can actually boost the audio frequency. So if you do bury a lavalier microphone, and again, you can use a lavalier microphone with this as well, so it's really kind of versatile, although it's kind of a weird form factor if you're going to use it as a body pack transmitter, unless you're just doing a quick pickup interview or something. But you can boost frequencies. When you hide those lavaliers, a lot of times the higher frequencies sort of disappear. They're kind of absorbed by the clothing. And so increasing the frequency here in the transmitter is kind of an interesting option. So you definitely get some cool things there. You can assign different user IDs to each transmitter. That's cool. 1.3-inch OLED display. As you saw here earlier, we can just go ahead and punch back on that. I'll switch over. So here, for example, I can punch it on. Give me 3 seconds here to enable. I know that's upside down, but that's kind of based on our setup here, how we had to do it. But it's got this really nice OLED screen. These are nice from the standpoint that even out in the direct sunlight, you can usually see them pretty well. So they're still usable without too much trouble out in the sunshine. And again, just like on the original system, I can control all of the transmitter settings from the receiver. Super nice feature as well. So a lot of systems you just can't do that. So it's really great to have that as well. All right, back over here. Screen lock. So this is nice to have a screen lock on here, especially if you've got someone handling, obviously it's going to be plugged onto a microphone if they're holding it and using it for an interview. You don't want them to bump the buttons and either, accidentally mess up some of the settings or turn off the recording or something like that. It automatically locks, and so you're good there. And then the recorder is a 24-bit, 48 kilohertz recorder to a micro SD card. So that's cool. As I mentioned before, XLR input and a 3.5 millimeter mic line input. So that's handy. And it does supply phantom power. So for example, right now, because we are using a shotgun microphone, we're using the Sennheiser MKH416 here. This requires phantom power, so this transmitter is supplying the power that the microphone needs. So you can use not just handheld dynamic microphones, but also a wireless boom. So that's pretty cool as well. All right. I haven't tried it yet, but one of the things that I'm interested in trying is too, when you are booming wirelessly, you have to kind of distribute the weight of the boom pole. So if you put the microphone and the transmitter on one end, you're going to have a lot of weight on that one particular end. So it might be possible also to run this down to the other end of the boom pole and then put a cable between them. I need to test that out. Should be fine. But that's another thing that I've got in mind here to try out in the next little bit. All right, now one thing that's perhaps a little controversial, but I think that Deity has done a pretty decent job of. They do have, so the transmitter and the receivers all have inbuilt lithium batteries. So that's a good and a bad thing. So, one of the things that concerns me about is, okay, well, if you run out of power on your shoot, then you're without power. You can power it via the USB-C input, and that's fine for the receiver, but for a transmitter, that's not very convenient. So that's one thing. Another thing is when the battery dies, there's always that question, okay, now what? Andrew from Deity actually has said that it's actually pretty easy to change the batteries. You can actually undo some screws here, and it's no soldering required. You can put a new battery in. So it looks like they're going to have a program, hopefully, for that as well. So that solves that problem as well. So these are just some things to consider, because that can be a challenge, definitely, with with inbuilt batteries. On the bright side, they get some pretty good life here. You can see they're speccing it at 10 hours of battery life at 100 milliwatts. So at the highest power setting, it should be able to last up to 10 hours. Now, I think for a lot of the projects that many of us are working on, that's going to be fine. For a production sound mixer, that may not be enough. So obviously, this is kind of aimed more at the indie film crowd, I think. So that's one thing to keep in mind. 8 hours of record time on an 8 gigabyte micro SD card. We'll go ahead and test some of those things and see how things go. Also, it has a headphone jack for live monitoring and listening to playback here on the transmitter. And let me just see. We will switch over to that camera. Here we go. Okay. That's actually, I'm going to have to turn the mic. It may make a little sound here. It doesn't want to slide. There we go. So you can see the USB-C input, the headphone jack, and the micro SD slot on the side there. Go ahead and move that back. Hopefully without making too much racket. Oh, now you can't see the screen. There we go. Oh, you can hear those. Can you hear that? Curious if you can hear that. Let me know in the comments there. All right. Again, the screen and button auto lock, and it is firmware updatable. And that's where I think we've seen some really nice things come out of Deity. The limiter sounds so much better now to me than on the original version when it first came out. So they've really made some good progress there. I think what is cool about this is we've got Deity has Andrew, who has done a bunch of production sound mixing, helping to design their products and kind of acting as a product manager and designer. So he's really kind of made sure that the engineers keep in mind kind of the practical things that those of us that are doing sound really need. And so they've done a variety of great things. Like having this limiter in the transmitter itself is just amazing. Again, unprecedented at this price point. And you can go ahead and go to the website and see all of the different specs and things of that nature here. But in terms of the kind of the feel of things here, the body is mostly metal. Actually, I was surprised. It feels like mostly metal along here. And I think there's a plastic strip down the middle. You do have to have plastic here because it has an internal antenna, no external antenna, so it has to be able to get through the body itself. The radio frequency has to be able to get through, and so that's what it looks like so far. I'll have to take a closer look, but overall, again, just like we saw in the first version, build quality was not an issue. I felt like they did a really nice job here. Like, for example, on the receiver, this part of the body is all metal, and then on the sides here, we have some plastic, and then, of course, we have the external antennas, which are removable with the SMA connectors. So, again, that whole kind of build quality mindset is carried over here into this new transmitter as well. So really nice job there. All right, well, let's go take a look at the comments here real quick and see if we have any questions that we can answer. Take a quick peek here. In Germany, it's now January 17th. You guys are living in the future in Germany. Andre says, sounds pretty good. So let's just start putting some of these up on the screen. Andre, thanks for joining us tonight. And yeah, I'm curious what other people think too. Whoa, Gunther, 4 a.m. must be in Germany as well. Sorry, Curtis. Love everything you do, and much thanks for bringing me so far in such a short time. Not sure what the story's about, but Jay, what is the difference between using the Mix Pre 3 directly into camera as opposed to Wave? Well, what the big difference is, and that's a fine question. So the way we're set up here, so we have the transmitter going into the receiver. This receiver runs over to, I'm going to move it just carefully so I don't unplug anything. Here we have a Mix Pre, and then its output of the Mix Pre is going into the Panasonic GH5. So the difference is there that you are actually not using the, well, I'm not 100% sure of the signal path through the Mix Pre, but basically what's happening is the output of the Mix Pre is going into the GH5. The GH5 then has to take that analog signal and convert it to digital. So you are giving up some potential quality there by having the Panasonic do that analog to digital conversion. So it's not going to be the same in terms of perfectioning audio quality, but in this case, I'm doing it mainly for convenience because we're live streaming. Normally during a shoot, I might run audio to camera, but I would also record on the recorder. That way, if I did have problems with the audio that ran to camera, or I felt like I needed to do some, significant processing, I would have the raw files on, so to speak, the raw audio clips, the WAV files on the Mix Pre that I could substitute in for the camera audio. So that's kind of the main difference there. Thanks for the question, Jay. Analog limiter, that's cool. That is cool indeed. Soundspeed, I like that all, well, hello. Thanks for joining us here. I like that all these brands, Deity, Audio Limited, Tentacle, etc., are building built-in recorders, even if Zaxcom are restricting them from full functionality. I agree. I think that's a nice step forward. And if those patents are ever challenged in court and Zaxcom loses, then it would be just a firmware update, and everyone in the United States could then use that feature as well. And I think you're right. Here's another comment here, because at least built-in recorders give you more options on set. Absolutely agree. So again, if we're hurting and the wireless just isn't working out, we can switch over to recording. So, all right, we got a question here from FilmLab. What's a good level to be on the Zoom H1N when using a boom? Whatever level you have to get to get the peaks, somewhere around minus 18 to minus 12 dB. It's a consumer grade recorder, and so I would probably run it closer to minus 12 dB. You're going to be a little bit of risk of clipping if someone gets really, really loud, but I think generally that's going to be a pretty good spot to be. All right, quick question. If you were to live stream from a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, what capture board is recommended in an affordable way? I've used a few of them. So tonight we're using the Blackmagic Design A10 Mini, and I'm not going to risk moving that into camera view here, but you'll have to trust me. That's what we're switching with here. So for example, when I switch back and forth, we're using the Blackmagic A10 Mini. And it's nice. It's about $300 US. I don't know what your budget is, but I've actually found this to be more reliable than any of the others that I've used, and I'll talk about what those are as well. But here, for example, you can do you can do these transitions like that. You have a lot of options here, and I've been super impressed with the A10 Mini so far. It's $295 US, and it is probably the best money I've ever spent. Like I actually look forward to doing live streams now instead of dreading them because I'm worried about whether the gear is going to work out or not. So that's the first one. The one I was using previously is the AJA UTAP HDMI. And it basically has an HDMI input on one side that comes from your camera and a USB output on the other side that goes to your computer. And so that one works okay. And then before that, I was using the Blackmagic Design Mini Recorder, and that one was a nightmare. I don't know what it was about that one. I mean, I'm on an iMac Pro, so I don't know if it's a Mac thing and if it works better on Windows, I don't know. But it would work. It was like I'd had to unplug it and then plug it back in about 15 times before it started working. Once it started working, it was solid. But I finally got frustrated one day and bought the UTAP from AJA. That one was a little bit easier to get up and running. It had the same issue where I felt like I had to unplug it and plug it back in. It was just like this really flaky getting started thing. Once it got started, it was fine. But the Black Magic has been flawless. Like you plug it in and it works. So I really can't say enough positive things about it. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Jason says, happy Thursday, friends. Likewise, Jason, thanks for joining. What's the best non-phantom shotgun microphone you would use with an XLR transmitter plug-on? I don't know if I've ever come across a shotgun microphone that didn't need phantom power unless it was self-powered. I guess like a Rode NTG4 Plus. I don't know. Let's have people in the comments. I don't know if I have a suggestion there. The NTG4 Plus, if you haven't seen last week's video, which I did where a big kind of meta review of different boom microphones, the NTG4 Plus is an okay microphone. It's not at the top of my list by any means. I wouldn't highly recommend anyone buy one. Just don't love the sound of it. So I don't know. Maybe there's some others out there that know that, know some ideas there of microphones that sound great, that are self-powered, that could work with a plug-on transmitter. Hey, Dave. Curtis Livestream. Yes. Good to have you here. Neil, excited to see a chat on the new Deity wireless gizmo. Yes, I am excited we could do this too. Can we get a scream? I don't know if I can do a scream, but here's a talking up close where we're actually hitting the limiters, I think, both at the Deity level and at the mix pre level, periodically at least. So there's a little, I'm not going to do a full scream, but there's a little limiter test for you. Hopefully that's helpful. Back to David. Oh, okay. There's a suggestion. The Sennheiser MKE 600. I would not recommend the NTG2 or the ME66. Haven't used the MKE 600, however, but I hear it's a little better with question marks. So that's one considering. Well, thank you for the super chat, and thank you for the help out there. Cray, it's good to have you here. You sent an inquiry to Deity to find out if it will transmit and record at the same time in Australia. The answer to that should be yes. It should be able to do that. It's only the United States where the patent exists. And so based on the marketing material we have so far, you should be good. So it's a good day to be an Australian or to be working in Australia. You have both those microphones. So you have some good options there. Excellent. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend that as a criteria in choosing a shotgun. It limits you to only very poor choices. The Deity HD-TX can supply phantom power, so you're good there. It's a good point. I agree. There are some better options out there. I think we covered that already, Film Lab. I hope that was helpful for you. Can I use the Zoom H4n Pro to be used direct via USB? Yes, you can. You can hook it up to your computer and record directly to your computer via USB. Thank you for the comment. I don't know what you're saying. I apologize. But thanks for joining us. Deity seems to rip off Rode products and then add a little extra. How ethical is this, I wonder? That's an interesting perspective. And actually, if you consider the latest release, which is the Rode VideoMic NTG, to me, that looks like a massive ripoff of the Deity D3 Pro, VMic D3 Pro. So looks like it's going both ways. I do like to see the competition, and I don't know how ethical it is. I don't know if there's going to be lawsuits, but which of them own patents on certain things or so on and so forth. But it is good to see the competition. I don't know if I have an answer to the ethical. I think it goes both ways, though, is the problem. I've seen what looks to me like Rode ripping off Deity just as well as the other way around. So yeah, tough question. I just bought the Sennheiser G5 Filmmaker Kit. Not familiar with that. G4, okay. I thought maybe I missed a year or two. Okay. All right, hearing things okay over there? If the pole has a side or bottom exit, what is the weight factor like on this or any other plug-on transmitter? Let's take a look. We actually have the specs here, and in terms of weight, we're looking at 220 grams right here for the HD-TX. So that's not too bad. So you probably have options there. You could go either way. If you wanted to kind of run it to the end of the pole through the cable in the boom pole, then you definitely have that option. But 220 grams, that's actually going to line up with, that'll help balance things out, I think. So not a bad option. You can hear the clicking, definitely. Yeah, I was afraid of that. So that is one thing to keep in mind. But the good news is you have the ability to change the settings from the transmitter. So hopefully you shouldn't need to be fiddling around with the HDTX while you're actually recording. So good to know you can hear it. Good to know you have other options too. We can definitely hear those buttons, okay. A square plug on a connector for Phantom is normal. A zillion other brands have done this. I think you're talking about the question about how ethical it was. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, so you're referring to the HDTX as a potential ripoff of the News Shooter kit from Rode. Yeah, Rode's not the first one to make a plug-on transmitter like this. Sennheiser did it well before them, and probably others before them as well. So, yep, Phantom 48 volts power is included in the HDTX, so that's great news. Bit jealous of the G4. Good luck with that. That's not a bad option for wireless there as well. If you want to discuss who has done the most blatant of blatant ripoffs recently, that's Rode. As a come on, just look at how similar the Rode NTG5 is. I would say not so much the NTG5, but the Video Mic NTG. So the NTG5 is actually, that's an RF bias mic. I mean, maybe that's a ripoff of Sennheiser. I'm not sure. 8060, I'm not sure. Film Lab, I think we got your question earlier, so refer back. So basically what we're saying is you set the input level until the peaks are hitting about -12. Who's the core market they're aiming at? I think this is really going to be more independent filmmakers or corporate video shooters and things of that nature, kind of probably not at the highest end of the market. So you're not going to see this probably on the major Hollywood and Atlanta film sets and, the major budget film sets. But I think you are going to see it a lot in videographers' bags. I think you're going to see it a lot in independent filmmakers' kits, things of that nature. It seems to fit nicely there. I think 2.4 gigahertz is a really difficult frequency to work with here as far as wireless. They've done a respectable job. I think they've done a pretty good job, but you're never going to get quite the ability to pierce through barriers with 2.4 gigahertz simply because of physics. They just can't. And I'd be interested. So those of you that do production sound, if I'm off base there, let me know. But I think that's really kind of my perspective. So that's kind of who it's aimed at, really. Alejandro, since you last spoke with Andrew, was there any mention of Deity creating a UHF receiver and transmitter in the near future? I can't say, but keep your eye out. Sounds really good. Thanks, Joshua. Roy Spears, why not use a Sennheiser capsule? This actually is a Sennheiser MKH416. I'm not sure if that's what you meant, but that's what we're using here tonight. Pro Copy Australia 1 looks quite comprehensive. Agreed. Whoa, it's midnight in Chile. Touche Films. Thanks for joining us. And then 2 p.m. in the other land down under. Is that the way? I don't know. Smoky. Oh yeah, smoky. I do hope that the fires are under control soon. That's a bad situation there. Back to the kind of the competition between Rode and Deity that we're seeing here. Now, keep in mind two things. Rode is a much bigger company than Deity. Deity's a tiny little startup. They have probably 10 employees or something like that. I don't know, maybe 15. I actually met up with Andrew in California a couple of weeks ago. It was really fun to kind of catch up with him in person. Um, here's an interesting thing that I've noticed is that Rode has been pushed to innovate to a much greater extent since Deity's been in existence. That's my perception, kind of my read on things. And that's really good to see because, the video mic, as I think back over the last 8 years or whatever it's been, so there was the Video Mic Pro, which had kind of the rubber band shock mount assembly. And then they teamed up with Rycote, and then they added, basically the same microphone, but they had a Rycote mount, which was good. And then several years after that, the Video Mic Pro Plus, which was a step forward in a couple of ways. I mean, I think it was good there is that they've changed from 9-volt batteries to an inbuilt or a user replaceable lithium ion battery, and you could buy additional lithium ion batteries and swap them out mid-shoot if you needed to, or you could pop AA batteries in. That was I think that was a really nice kind of innovative thing. But beyond that, it didn't seem a lot different from the prior model. But now with Rode, or with Deity made the D3 Pro, and then now we see Rode with the NTG, the Video Mic NTG. Now, one could say, well, Rode must have already been working on that because they couldn't have introduced it as quickly as they did from the time that Deity released the D3 Pro. I don't know. I don't know if they were already working on that design, but it looks an awful lot like the D3 Pro. I'm sorry. Just making an observation there. So in any case, it's nice to see, the competition there. So definitely a step forward for us, I think, here. 2:13 p.m. in Sydney, Australia. Sydney's a fun city, by the way. I got to visit a couple times. Really enjoyed it. It's early evening on the 17th. I'll be heading out for Friday drinks soon. Very good. Enjoy. Cheers. All right. This is my first time seeing you live stream. You've got a good setup. Would love to see it behind the scenes. We actually did it behind the scenes. If you go over to my secondary channel, Curtis Judd Audio, we talked about how I had things set up. The only thing I've changed now is I'm using the Blackmagic ATEM Mini as my capture card now and sort of ATEM interface with all the buttons and stuff. So, but yeah, we've got it behind the scenes there if you're interested. Definitely go check that out. Roy asks, I use a Sennheiser SKP 100G3 plug-on transmitter to my reporter's mic. It works great. Yeah, so that was kind of the one of the main, very common options out there is the Sennheiser G3 plug-on transmitter, and it is. It's a great product. And in fact, Andrew tells me that this was, and Steve over at Deity say this is the #1 requested product in their wireless lineup as a first priority. So. How much is the new Deity mic? It's the Deity wireless system is, I think, what you're asking about here. So again, we're talking about the interview kit, which comes with a dual channel receiver, the plug-on transmitter, plus it comes with the traditional body pack transmitter as well. And I believe it's going to be same price as the original Deity Connect, if I'm not mistaken. I need to check that still. I just got it today, but I think that's in the $770 US range. So we'll double check that to make sure, but I think it's somewhere in there. Okay, let's see. Over to sound speed. David is your first name, right? Sound speed. Can we call you that? Or should we just stick with sound speed? He's in New Zealand. Camera analog to digital converters are bad, also bad input impedance transformers. Yeah, there are a lot of things that are not so great. You're right. So thank you for pointing that out. It's not just the analog to digital converters, which are potentially lower quality, but it is also the analog to digital converters, also the input impedance transformers. So there's a lot of, even the analog portion of the inputs are not so great. All right, let's see what we got. Sad about the disabled functionality in the good old USA. I agree. We should have maybe a moment of silence where we can all cry for a couple minutes and then move on with our lives. Don't drink any goldfish on your drinking night out. Ivan, thank you very much. You've helped me a lot with choosing a lav microphone. Voice technologies is very good for me. Hello from Russia. Ivan, so glad to hear that. So he's talking specifically about the Voice Technologies VT500 lavalier microphone. It's sort of a front firing. It's a little bit different configuration, but it's about a $200 US microphone. And I've had pretty good experience with it if you're going to hide it under clothing in particular. It's really voiced for hiding under clothing, and it's a great microphone. So I'm glad that worked out for you, Ivan. There are a few people here from Smoky Sydney. Deity's core market is anybody who can't afford Lectrosonics, Wizicom, Zaxcom Audio Limited, as arguably Deity is the best there is on the market currently, although the Sony UWP D21 is nice as well. So that's Sony's digital system as well. I think the Sony system, if I'm not mistaken, is a UHF transmission system, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. All right. We've got the Yellow Rose channel. Big fan from Bangladesh. Hey, thanks for joining us. Good to have you here. Interesting. So you expect to see this on a Pro sound card. That is a good question. Let's see what David says. Oh, yes, I'd totally forgotten about the Rode NTG4 Plus, but Curtis is totally 100% right. You limit your options severely if you restrict yourself to only battery-powered shotguns. Okay, so we already talked about that. The new DDS Mic 2S comparable to other indoor cardioid mics. Been enjoying the indoor video mic videos, but it seems like the market hasn't really catered well to talking head videos, commercial, YouTube, etc. Yeah, you could use it. It's a short shotgun microphone, and if you're going to be booming it in very closely, I think it's definitely a valid choice. Yeah, not a bad choice. I do like the DDS Mic 2S. I like the DDS Mic 2 better, to be honest, but there's that. Josh loves his ME66. It's the most versatile microphone ever made. Okay, thank you for that, Josh. AJ Newman, I don't know the answer to that. Possibly, but I probably am not in a good position to be talking about that here, nor suggesting that people defy patent laws. I know that's a sensitive topic. Indoor pencils are overrated. NTG and a bit of treatment, please. That's a fair point. I mean, here's the thing. A lot of people say, well, and I've talked about it a lot as well. Shotgun microphones do have that. There's a minor risk with shotgun microphones. You can get off axis. You get some reverberation slapping off a wall. You get this weird warbling sound. But if you don't have a lot of that reverb going and you aim the mic appropriately, then shotguns are perfectly usable indoors. And a lot of people love the sound of the NTG3. It's a very bass-heavy, rich-sounding microphone, and yet it also has a nice high end. It's not quite the same as a Sennheiser. Sennheiser seems to have that rich low end, plus it has a very crisp high end. So the voicing's a little bit different, and the off-axis rejection's a little bit different too, with the Sennheiser being a little bit more, rejects a little bit more off the back of the mic. But overall, yeah, totally a valid approach. Jeffrey Homesteaders, thanks for joining us tonight. Gerald Undone was talking about that, but isn't that the heart of iteration? I think it really is, yeah. Ahmed, my friend and I are in a tight budget situation. Our Wi-Fi wireless lavalier system is a go for movie production. We are about to buy Sennheiser XSWD, though. I had a pretty good experience with the Sennheiser XSWD. It's very simple to use, doesn't have a lot of options, and it depends on which camera you're using, so I'd be careful there. If you're using a Panasonic GH camera, they have very hot inputs, and so I found that with the Sennheiser XSWD, you didn't have the ability to decrease the output level from the receiver enough, and so you were kind of on the edge of clipping a lot. So be careful with that. It just depends on which camera you're using. But if you're not using a Panasonic and you have a little bit more range of input level on your camera, that's one option. Or if you're going to be recording the XSWD through a proper audio recorder, which I would recommend, then yeah, that can be a fine system. I've got a review if you're interested in seeing that. And yeah, for its price, I think it's a pretty fair, pretty good system. Just saw Gerald Undone did a sub $500 dialogue mic video right after you. When are you guys going to do a collab? No immediate plans, but I'm certainly open to it. I need to contact him. He's been doing a lot more live streaming, and it probably would make sense to do live streaming. He's based in Canada. I'm in Utah. And so we'd have to see about getting in either doing a live stream or maybe doing something when we're in the same city sometime. I saw him last year at NAB, so we met face to face. Great guy. And we're almost the same height. He's a very tall man. I don't know if you can tell that from the videos necessarily. Why is the NTG more expensive than other NTG mics? Clinton, I'm wondering if you're talking about the Rode NTG 5? If so, the Rode NTG 5 is a RF bias microphone. So it's using a different technology inside of it, and it works really, really well. It's a beautiful, to me, it sounds fantastic. It again, it stands up much better in humid conditions where a DC bias microphone, if you get some condensation on the capsule, those generally kind of fritz out and you're kind of out of business for that shoot. But that's where the RF bias microphones tend to do better. So that's why the NTG3 and the NTG5 are so much more expensive than the 2 and the 4 and the 1. Just kind of a high level look at that. Is the Juicedlink Riggi Micro preamplifier still relevant with the Sony A7R4? I think so. Unfortunately, Juicedlink is out of business. I think they were a casualty of the Zaxcom patents. I think basically what happened is they released a body pack recorder and they got sued by Zaxcom, and Juicedlink was a very small business. It was basically Robert, I don't remember Robert's last name, nice guy, but it was basically just his little startup, and he was one guy trying to make this thing work. And my understanding is he got basically sued to the point where he couldn't keep running his business, and so sadly it's gone. But I think in terms of technology, yeah, sure, it's still definitely very much relevant. What am I using for a top-down camera? This is the Panasonic GH5 that you're seeing right here, and this is the GH5S that you're seeing here. So you can see I haven't totally dialed in this setup here because this is my mix room, so I have other stuff sitting here, but this Sentry stand here is holding the overhead camera right here, and you can see it's shaking a little bit because I just touched it. But good question. G4 transmitter does not have Phantom. I've got the ME66 to use for now, bought the Brilliant NTG5, but we'll run a cable for it. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, G4, the 100 series does not provide Phantom power. I think on the G4 you have to move up to the 500, or maybe it's the 300. I'd need to double check that, but it's the 100 version does not have supply Phantom power. Booty asks, Deity D3 or D3 Pro? I have not used the D3, but I'm going to say that the D3 Pro is probably a better option. It's got its own power, it supplies its own power, and so usually mics that need microphones, condenser microphones need power of some sort. And when you have a small diaphragm condenser microphone like a camera top shotgun microphone, the camera can supply 3 to 5 volts plug-in power. But sometimes the microphone circuitry may need a little bit more to kind of really optimize the sound. My guess is that the D3 Pro is probably going to give you it's going to give you a hotter output signal. It's going to be a little easier to work with. So if you can swing it, I would probably aim for the D3 Pro. But maybe someone here has experience with the D3 and can speak to that specifically. So go ahead and let those people speak up as well. Any chance you will shout into the mic to test the limiters soon? I did actually just do that a minute ago. Suppose we can do that again here. I'm going to go to the overhead. Let's wake this guy up here. And wake this up. You're going to hear a clicking. Got to hold it for 3 seconds. Okay, you can now see the meter. Okay, here we go. This is a test of the limiters on the Deity Connect Interview Kit as well. We're also hitting the limiters on the Mix Pre at the same time. So there's a quick test doing a little shouting for you. Bangs Naughty Bits. I hope you enjoyed that. Did he mention which camera setup? So yeah, GH5 and GH5S is what we're using here today. This is the GH5S. Overhead is GH5. those little cameras. I'm so tempted to buy other cameras, but these just keep delivering for me. Here's an interesting point. So Rode also copied Sennheiser, the 416 with their NTG3 and their NTG8. So is it really so bad? Everyone copies everyone. If we couldn't, then we'd never be able to improve society. Okay, that's a fair look at things. I'm with sound speed on this, of course. If we find out they've been stepping on someone's patents, that's a whole other thing, yes. And then there's also the issue of patents being granted. Let me go back to this. There's still also the issue of patents being granted for things that didn't necessarily require a lot of research and development. So from my point of view, a patent should be granted when a company invests a lot of research and development. That is my understanding of what the original idea was, is patents were to protect companies that had invested a whole lot of time and money in researching and developing a new technology. If it's a case where they're just taking an existing technology and another existing technology and putting them together, there's some research and development for developing that specific product, perhaps, but like those two technologies are already existing. They didn't invent either one of them necessarily. And just putting them together, to me, seems like kind of a dodgy case for granting that company a patent. And that's also an issue in this case. And I think that's what some people contend in the case of Zaxcom. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I think some people contend that Zaxcom basically took two existing technologies, applied for a patent, were granted that because nobody else made a product like that, when they didn't necessarily invent the two original technologies. So I don't know. It's a tough call, but that's where we're at here in the United States currently. What is the best affordable LED light option for a key light? There is no room for a softbox or a light stand. Well, tonight, we're getting ready to, I don't know if that's the cheapest though. So this is not a cheap light. It's a $799 US light, but it's an LED panel from D&O Lighting that we're getting ready to review, just working on it. And I've actually been using that for some of my corporate shoots with good results. So I don't know what kind of budget you're looking for the Paul Ann story, but that's an option there. We have reviewed some other small lights on the channel. So if you want to go take a look around if you go to the channel and there's a section for lighting for video, if you scroll through there's some options there. Some of the small ones you can get away with if you don't need a ton of light. And usually for me, if you're going to use it as a key light, you have to bounce it off of something or diffuse it. Generally bouncing it's going to get you more light. That's generally my take. So there's some smaller ones. So depending on your budget, go take a look at that playlist, and I think hopefully there'll be something there for you. Rode also has some differentiating technology in terms of their interference tube and perhaps their capsule. Could be. They're both, I know, both Sennheiser and Rode are using RF bias technology. Sennheiser uses it in all their MKH microphones, and then Rode is using it in their NTG 3, 8, and 5. So I don't know how different the implementation is. Perhaps there are different ways to implement RF bias, but that's one thing. But yeah, it could be that their interference tube is a little different as well. All right. Mark from Australia, I have the Zoom F6. My question is, what is the easiest program to do 32-bit float audio editing? Well, the cheapest is probably Audacity, which is free. I do most of my work. I do some of my work in between three different apps right now. DaVinci Resolve, you can get a free version, which has Fairlight, which is basically a digital audio workstation. Unfortunately, that doesn't do 32-bit correctly at this point, so that one's out for now. Number two, I use Adobe Audition, but that costs $20 a month or however much based on your locality for the subscription. So there's a price associated with that. And then there's also Pro Tools, which is also similarly has a price associated with it. So those are the three that I use, and Pro Tools and Audition both handle 32-bit float just fine. Audacity can do it for free. So there's some options there. Which is the easiest? I would be as concerned about easiest. They're all probably equally, well, Pro Tools is probably harder to learn from my point of view. But Audition and Audacity are pretty similar. I think I feel like if you are on a tight budget and can't afford a licensing fee, then Audacity is probably your choice. That was the first digital audio workstation app I used. And then if you can, I personally use Adobe Audition for good effect. So hopefully that's helpful there. JMM Garza, love the sound quality. Still not what I need. You are right. The updated Deity is perfect for independent producers. Saludos from Tejas. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the comment. Yeah, I agree. I think it's really kind of fit in that group. Love your content. What's your opinion of the MKH 8060 and 8070? Only just came across them recently. Haven't heard a lot of people talk about them. I have not used either one of those. I do have a friend, and I don't know if he's here tonight. Rallin Man, are you here? Because he can definitely speak to those. He actually owns the 8060 and uses it on production sound. We're gonna have to wrap up here in just a couple minutes. So this will probably be the last question we tack for now. The 8060 is quite good. I think it's a great shotgun microphone, short shotgun microphone. And I believe the 8070 is a longer version of that. They're both using RF bias technology, so they'll hold up very nicely in humid conditions. The voicing to me sounds very good. The one downside is that I have heard from Rallin Man that when he uses the 8060 with his sound devices 633, there are situations, it has a very hot output, the MKH 8060 at least, that there are certain situations where he hasn't been able to reduce the gain enough to prevent things from clipping. And he thinks there's some sort of interaction going on between the 8060 and the way it works and the sound devices 633 and the way it works, or perhaps it's the way its limiters work. But in any case, he does find situations where there's really loud sound pressure levels, like he was in a stadium recording the crowd kind of responding to, whatever it was they were responding to. And he got some clipping and wasn't able to gain down enough to prevent from clipping. So that is the only downside I've ever heard of that microphone. I use the 8050, which is the non-shotgun version, sort of the indoor boom mic, and had great results on that. So if anyone else has experience with those, would love to hear about that as well. All right. Apologies. I have to get going, get back to work on these reviews that we're working on. We will have a review again of the Deity Interview Kit Connect Interview Kit here in the next little bit. Let's go ahead and close that. There we go. So look for that. That'll be coming up. And then probably this weekend, we'll have a review on the light over here, the D&O 180W LED panel. It's a bicolor light. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you all again real soon. Take care, everybody.